In this segment of Lorraine Explains, we're at AutoWorks Service Center in Oshawa. I'm with Chris Muir, and we're going to tell you
all about what we look for when you bring us a car you're considering buying.
So while paint differences may be, artistically less pleasing when you're looking at a used car, corrosion or rust is actually far more important.
Finding somebody who knows the differences in what kind of rusts you're looking for is very important. Here we can see there's a little bit of rust on the hood, but when we get it up in the air, we're going to see a lot worse than this.
Okay, Chris, even I can see that this is all eaten through, so...
Yeah, it's not the best by any stretch. Where we were looking before on the hood, on a fender, it's a replaceable panel. We are looking for this before you buy a used car, just to give you an idea of what it's going to cost. Something like this, though not structural, will still make it fail safety. So as we're checking out things, before we even take the tires off, we're going to have a look at the front end. Now we can't check the ball joints on this truck at this height. We have to unload the ball joint, so that would involve putting a jack under this arm and taking some pressure off of it. What we can check though are the tie rods, idler arms, pitman arms, the stuff that's going to cost you $100 a piece, and when you're talking 10, 15 pieces in a front end, that can add up really quick. So on this particular truck, if we look right up here, we can see the pitman arm and the idler arm, which is way over there. They're loose on this vehicle, and we'll see the play in that front end linkage. And that play will leave the truck feeling a little off-center to the driver, accelerate tire wear, changes toe. It just leads to a poor handling truck. This one's not in terrible shape, but the worse they get, the more you're going to feel it in the vehicle, and eventually you can have steering failure on something like this, so this is something that you'd want to be advised of.
Your mechanic is also going to check out the brakes. What are you looking for?
Well, when we open it up, we're going to look for a whole bunch of different things. Before we took the wheel off this one, we checked out the wheel bearing to make sure that they were adjusted well. Some of them have no adjustment. This one, he's lucky enough he does. He's got a little bit of play in it. Once we get past that point, we're going to start looking at the brake surface itself. We're looking for any excessive corrosion on the face of the rotor. This rotor, this one's actually not in terrible shape, believe it or not. It's not as shiny as if it came out of a box, but it's still in good shape. Next, we're going to look at the pad thickness. Now there's going to be a pad here, and there's a pad that matches it on the other side. We're looking to make sure that it's over 2 or 3 30-seconds of material, 2 or 3 millimeters I should say, and that it's in good shape, doesn't have any heat scoring, anything like that. We're going to make sure that the caliper moves successfully. We're going to make sure the piston inside of it moves back. The caliper moves back and forth, the sliders are well lubricated, and we're going to check out these rubber lines. These lines allow you to turn the vehicle and still have brakes at the wheel end. Okay, they allow the suspension to cycle, and they will get little cracks in them over time. They'll dry out, and as soon as they start getting cracks, this is carrying the hydraulic fluid that runs the caliper. So if one of these fails, you can be in trouble really, really quickly.
Those are things that aren't going to show up in a Carfax. They're not going to be written down from a seller. You've got to get the wheels off to take a look at this kind of stuff.
We're looking for all kinds of stuff when we're looking for fluid leaks. We're looking for the obvious stuff, as well as the stuff that's a little bit more subtle that may, cook off, evaporate before the customer ever sees it, but shows that components are wearing out. If you look right up here, you can see it's covered in like a sludge, and those are oil cooler lines. But that's something where if you let it go long enough, eventually one of those lines can go, and it can cost you an engine at some point. And that's worst case scenario. That's not typical of it. Usually you'll be upset because you've got a big puddle of oil in the driveway. Okay,
we started the brakes under the front tire.
That's right.
We all know what's under our right foot, but what else are you looking for underneath the car?
Well, what makes the brake at the end of the tire work is hydraulic fluid, and hydraulic fluid has to get there somewhere. So it travels down these little silver lines, and those little silver lines are made of steel. Some of them are stainless, some of them aren't, or aluminized, so they resist corrosion, but they only resist corrosion. So we're looking to see if they're starting to rust, how badly they're rusting. This one's in great shape. We want to be able to see things like serpentine belts. We want to be able to check the oil in both the engine and the transmission. We want to make sure the battery's secured, the battery's in good shape. We'd usually do a load test on the battery if you're doing a pre-purchase inspection. Air filters. Make sure that things like the harnesses, spark plug wires are all in good shape or they look fairly new. So you don't get any unpleasant surprises when you take your car home.
So again, a mechanic, he's not discounting the purchase and telling you not to make it. He's just telling you this is the information you have to make an informed purchase.
Absolutely.
This is another edition of Lorraine Explains. For Driving.ca, I'm Lorraine Sommerfeld, and this is Chris Muir.